let's dive right into the deep end. This month, Congressman Adam Smith introduced the Empowering Individuals to Success Through Education and Workforce Training Act. The legislation would offer more support for people in workforce training programs and two-year education programs.
Some of that support includes child care, transportation, and housing assistance. And Congressman Smith joins us this morning from Washington, D.C. to continue the conversation. Nice to have you with us on the show, Congressman. Thanks for your time.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the chance.
Let's first talk about why this legislation in your mind was needed.
Well, workforce development is a crucial part of the economy. And look, we have the somewhat ironic situation where we have a lot of people who are looking for jobs or looking for well-paying jobs. And at the same time, we had a lot of jobs going unfilled. You know, Congress has passed massive increases in infrastructure funding, the CHIPS bill that's going to help with manufacturing plants for silicon chips, the Inflation Reduction Act focused on transitioning our energy economy. Those jobs need to be filled. Most of them don't require four-year degrees. They do require some sort of workforce development training, but a lot of the people seeking that training, even though that experience, that education is cheaper than a four-year degree, they still face challenges. They face challenges with transportation, with childcare, with healthcare, with other aspects of it to be able to afford to get the training they need to get the job. This bill is meant to close that gap, give them the economic support they need so that they can get the training to go fill these jobs, which that's the hope and goal of the legislation.
Congressman, can you talk more about the support for people in these programs? How will this legislation provide that, and does it have the support needed to pass the House and the Senate?
Well, first of all, we have a lot of good workforce development programs, a lot of apprenticeship programs. Unions are very involved. The electrical workers, the Liona Union, the laborers union, they set up these apprenticeship programs to give people the opportunity to come in and get the training, but they need that extra economic support to be able to afford it. This is a budget proposal, so even if the legislation itself doesn't pass, we are fighting to make sure that funds for programs like this are included in the appropriations process. But yeah, it's still, any piece of legislation introduced in Congress is an uphill fight. It's the nature of it. 435 House members, 100 senators. We all have to get on the same page. But the basic idea about increasing support for workforce development is something that has strong bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate.
Congressman, I want to ask you about money here. So we know that congressional leaders formally announced a deal to fund the U.S. government through the fiscal year. Both chambers still need to vote on that. Do you see this all coming together before Friday's deadline, and what do we expect on Friday?
I do. I mean, look, it's problematic because the fiscal year ends October 1st. So we have been operating on a continuing resolution, which is a stopgap funding mechanism that is not ideal since October 1st. And here we are almost 6 months past that date, and now we're finally finishing the last 6 appropriations bills. We passed the previous 6 a week ago. So it continues to be a problem. We need to fund the government as close to October 1st as possible. I mean, we can disagree on how to fund it, exactly what gets spent, but this delay undermines our ability to meet the needs in a lot of different areas. So hopefully we will do better next year. The year before, we passed it in early December. So hopefully we can get the appropriations bills done sooner in the future. But yes, this Friday, I think we will get it done.
Congressman Smith, now let's get to that pro-Palestinian protest during a town hall event in your district. Talk with us about what happened at that event and the statement you released on Monday. And also, where do you currently stand on a ceasefire agreement?
Well, first of all, I mean, calling it a protest really, I don't think does justice to what was done. It was an effort to shut down democracy. It was an effort to silence any voice on that or any other issue that disagreed with the people who were there. And I think that's just completely wrong. Look, the issues around Gaza are enormously important. And I've met with the groups that were present in that community repeatedly over the course of the last 5 months, since October 7th. This was just ridiculous. I mean, I tried to address the issues. They shouted me down. I couldn't get 4 or 5 words out of my mouth. They would ask questions, you know, again, completely out of order, but I tried to answer them and they wouldn't let me do it. Look, what is going on too often in politics on both the right and the left is an effort to silence and intimidate opposition as one method of forcing your worldview on everybody else. It's a huge problem in the Seattle area. Certainly, there have been debates over defunding the police and abolishing the criminal justice system. And in those instances, you had people try to intimidate elected officials and try to intimidate other voters. There were people at that meeting on Sunday who wanted to have a conversation about a wide variety of issues. They were silenced by this group, not giving them that opportunity. So, look, we have a representative democracy. We need to have a method to having a conversation. These groups weren't interested in a conversation. They were interested in trying to intimidate me and intimidate everybody else in that room into silence. And I think it's something we all need to stand up against.
Do you want to see a ceasefire?
I support, and I tried to get this out multiple times, but was, insulted and shouted down every time. I support a negotiated ceasefire and have for some time. A negotiated ceasefire that involves the release of the hostages as well. What these groups have supported since days after October 7th is a unilateral ceasefire that allows Hamas to basically get away with the murders they committed on October 7th. Look, there has to be a balanced approach here. There has to be the release of the hostages. There has to be some security commitments for Israel going forward. The Biden administration has been aggressively trying to negotiate that ceasefire for months. And look, part of the block to this is Hamas thinks that they are winning the PR war. They don't think they have to come to the table. They think they can continue to do what they're doing. We need to hold Hamas accountable for the war crimes that they are committing. Hiding behind civilians in the midst of a fight is a war crime. And that is what they are doing. It is placing the Palestinians at risk as well as the Israelis. So yes, a negotiated ceasefire, absolutely. A unilateral ceasefire that does nothing to bring the hostages back, no, I do not support that.
Congressman, knowing that you were coming on the show today, we asked viewers if they had any questions for you. And we got one from a user who wrote this: what's being done to secure the border, most likely talking about the southern border? And this person added this quote: Americans need our border secured so we don't have a terrorist problem like Israel has. What's your response to that, and what are we seeing at the border?
I think our border is a major challenge. We are being overrun by migration right now, and we do not have the security that we need. We negotiated a bipartisan border security bill in the Senate. Republicans and Democrats came together in the Senate with the White House and got an agreement that would strengthen border security. And then Donald Trump stood up and said he didn't want it because he wanted to have the issue for this November election. That sort of partisan politics is what's undermining our ability to get a bipartisan agreement. Look, we need immigration in this country, but we need immigration that is ordered and that is legal. And we need to expand that while also better securing our border. And that is the agreement that was negotiated, again, by a bipartisan group of senators. But then the Republicans voted it down because Donald Trump told them to. So, look, we need to pass that bill. We had the opportunity, and I hope the Senate will take it back up, and I hope that Republicans will agree with it.
Thank you so much, Congressman Smith, for joining us on ARC Seattle and for taking all of those questions. I know you have a lot on your plate. Thank you.
Thanks for giving me the chance. I appreciate it.
Just approves legislation that will expand foster care support for youth through age 21.
Senate Bill 5908 was passed in the legislative session and helps youths aging out of the foster care system. And joining us to continue this important conversation this morning is the bill's sponsor, State Senator Claire Wilson, who represents the 30th Legislative District. Senator, good morning to you.
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. So before we go into this bill itself, talk with us about why it was so important to provide more support for young people in the foster care system.
Well, young people who are raised by the state, and that's what they are, they're state-raised children, deserve the same kind of supports as any children in any kind of a family. And we went through something called the pandemic, as you're well aware of. And what we found was that the ability to provide extended care to these young people during the pandemic significantly reduced issues related to homelessness, to the receipt of public assistance, to the diagnosis and use of substances, treatment, criminal convictions. It is around how it is that we provide support. And we're aging young people out at 18, many of them into homelessness and into the very situations that are causing much of the public safety concerns that I've heard talk about on the program today. So the why is really bringing permanency to a program that we know that works, and also providing opportunity for young people to be supported and to get that support that they need in order to launch successfully into adulthood.
So let's talk more about that support. Senate Bill 5908, what important services will it provide for youth?
What it does do is prior to the age of 18, young people will hear and learn that they have access to extended foster care support 18 through 21. And currently, that opportunity exists. However, it is a requirement that if they're engaged in extended foster care, that they also have to be enrolled in high school or a GED program. They have to be enrolled in or show intent to be part of a post-secondary program or a VOC program. They have to participate potentially in job training, or they have to be employed 80 hours or more a month, or they have to be unable to engage in any of these programs because of a medical condition. And what we find is that young people were not opting in because of the barriers to access. And the other issue is they could only have one opportunity to take advantage. And if they didn't take advantage, then they didn't have any other opportunities. So what we're trying to do is really create a philosophical shift and really working to incentivize youth to take part in the program, and also help us create an incentive program that would be more of a carrot, if you will, than a stick, to make sure that they're engaged and involved in programs and activity, again, that are going to be supporting them as they launch. The other is that they do receive an independent living subsidy. That currently happens, and that remains unchanged. But it's really around incentivizing participation in activities and programs that meet the need, and really reducing barriers for young people that we know exist now and are really more challenging than ever before.
Senator, expand on some of what those incentives are.
Incentivizing participation, that's what we want youth to say and to tell us. And so part of the bill is directing the Department of Children, Youth, and Families to work with youth to create what does an incentive program look like that would cause them to want to step into programs rather than being required and having someone say, thou shalt do X, Y, or Z in order to do this. And what was happening is young people were stepping away and they were not taking advantage. And I think young people and their voice is critically important, that we create programs that utilize their own the information that we need to learn from them about their experiences, as well as what those supports look like. And they're very different today than I think they used to be. And as adults, I just think youth voice is critically important. I will say we've been working with Mockingbird, which is an organization that helps young people who are oftentimes homeless or being part and have been part of the child welfare or the extended foster care system. And they continue to be partners at the table to help us create this program. And I would assume they are going to continue to help and work with DCYF as we think forward about what programs look like, and also what specific activities young people want and need to be engaged in. I think the only other thing I'll say is housing is a huge piece of this, and we need to continue to work on that, because it's one thing to provide a living stipend. It's another thing to launch someone, but we cannot launch young people into homelessness. We have to do that in a way that support housing as well.
The need for housing is definitely great.
Yeah.
Senator, are young people allowed to opt out of the extended support if they feel they're ready to leave foster care, maybe before they're 21?
Yes, and that is a change in the legislation. This legislation says that prior to age 18, young people will know and to be automatically able to opt in and be part of extended foster care. So transition is seamless between the ages of 17, if you will, and 18. It also now provides an opportunity for young people to opt in down the road. Oftentimes we make decisions, and sometimes we make a decision that we wish we could have done something differently. And this will allow young people to come back in and say, you know, I do need some support. And the door is open for that as well.
I think it's going to help a lot of young people out there, so important work. I do have to ask you on a totally unrelated note, you and I were having a conversation about your mug during the commercial break. You might be aware that we have a mug club here on the show. Tell us which one you're using with that coffee this morning and the backstory behind that.
Well, this cup, it says Todd Beamer Titans. And for 8 years, I sat on the Federal Way School Board. And Todd Beamer is one of the traditional high schools in Federal Way. I will also share it is a big mug, so I can get a 2-for-1 in this cup, 2 cups of coffee for one, and it takes me through my morning. And thanks for asking about it.
Of course.
You've got a busy job. You need the double coffee, right? Double the coffee.
Senator,
thank you.
How often do you reheat that thing each morning, though?
Excuse me?
How often do you reheat that thing each morning?
You're going to tell my stories. People are telling me you should only heat it once, and I'll tell you, sometimes it lasts half a day. So
wow.
You can figure that one out.
Yeah.
I need to get one of those heaters that plugs into my computer so it keeps the mug warm while I am working, but I haven't done that yet. So
add it to the list, right? Add it to the list. Senator, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you both, and I just really appreciate your interest, and I know the young people do as well.
Yeah.
And you'll see more as we move forward in the coming years. So thanks again.
Yeah, we look forward to it. It's an important bill.
Absolutely.
It sounds like they've got a lot of support. She mentioned that organization, Mockingbird. They've got the governor's support and the services that the youth in foster care are going to receive is so critical. You know, setting them up for what's next after they're 21. She mentioned housing, she mentioned employment opportunities and education. So this is definitely going to set a good foundation. And
we know that time frame between the age of 18 and 21 is crucial for setting that foundation for the rest of your life. So thanks to the senator for that conversation this morning.